bit of presentation on volunteer policies and practices. Now, Special Olympics Wisconsin would not exist today without the time, energy, and commitment of the 11,000 plus volunteers that help run both agencies, regional competition, state competition, and help the process throughout the sports year. Special Olympics relies on its volunteers at all levels of the movement to ensure that every athlete is offered a safe and quality sports training and competition experience. Although Special Olympics Wisconsin cannot guarantee the safety of all participants in all circumstances, we recognize our responsibility to take all reasonable steps to ensure a safe environment for all. As a result, after considerable research and planning, Special Olympics Inc. has developed and implemented a volunteer screening policy which is mandatory for all U.S. programs, Special Olympics Wisconsin being one of them. The policy is based on and in compliance with Special Olympics Inc.'s volunteer screening policy. What we'd like to do is go forward and talk a little bit about the overall policy. What is a Class A volunteer, expectations, requirements there? How is it as a minor? Forms, processes, the background checks, what can be a disqualifier, what can be processes that would create restrictions, discuss that, as well as the overall code of conduct. What is a violation? What is the process regarding that? And then finally, we're going to do one kind of tack on end of it. We're going to talk a little bit about the volunteer expense reimbursement form that's become real critical with the time and dedication of the volunteers and the expectations for some costs and reimbursements thereof. So let's get started and talk a little bit about volunteer policies. First of all, a Class A volunteer, as it relates to an adult, all right, this is 18 and older. Class A volunteer, who needs to be a Class A within a particular agency, and this is what we're looking at or starting with now, kind of down to the core level, the agency level. You know, anybody or any volunteer that has regular close physical contacts with athletes. This is chaperones, this is coaches. Look at it that way. Or anybody who has supervision with them, you know, again, refer to the chaperones aspect of it. Volunteers who have an above average level of authority or involvement with Special Olympics Wisconsin, your regional athletic directors, your, you know, individuals, their games management team, they're all volunteers in that aspect, and those all need to be Class A volunteers for that. One of the keys is volunteers who handle cash or other assets, especially in Wisconsin, and that includes the agency level and the funds associated to that, and in amounts of 15,000 or greater throughout the year and ongoing. And volunteers who have access to personal information, athletes on personal information as it relates to athletes, to volunteers, and to donors. This includes from athlete medical information, addresses, contact information, that type of thing. So from a liability and protection aspect of it. So who is eligible? Who can be Class A adult or eligible to be a Class A volunteer? The individual must be 18 or older, right? Individuals must complete the protective behaviors training. This protective behavior training can be found on www.specialolympicswisconsin.org. Go to the tab, get involved, and under that is volunteer, and then Class A volunteers. This protective behavior must be completed and as part of this process, and must be done prior to the Class A volunteer form. So go online, do that, get it completed. It's short, and there's a little test afterwards regarding it, and So that is part of and in conjunction with the form itself. Individuals have submitted the Class A volunteer registration form. Um, you've been screened and approved by Special Olympics Wisconsin, a background check, and we'll talk a little bit about that going forward. Individuals must provide a photocopy of their driver's license. Now the key here is it must be a driver's license, cannot be a probationary or instruction permit. All right. If you do not have a driver's license, you need a copy of whether it's some form of identification with a photo ID as part of that. We need to do a background check, and having that information to provide to do that is critical. A note to state that you do not drive, to be accompanied with the Class A form. Other things is adult volunteers may handle cash or assets of Special Olympics Wisconsin in amount equal to or greater than 15,000, provided they are not restricted, and we'll talk about that in just a minute based on the results of the background screening. One of the key things, in order for the individual to be eligible, they must include an agency number as part of this Class A form. If they aren't sure of that, and they're doing it and they don't have access to the agency manager, the program they're a part of, or then go to the website, especially in Wisconsin, go under Who We Are tab, Regions, and then contact the Regional Athletic Director, and they will be able to guide you to who that agency manager and the agency number is for that program. Now for Class A minor eligibility, these are kids or minors from the age of 8 to 17, and they are able to volunteer with certain Special Olympics Wisconsin positions. Individuals have submitted a minor Class A registration form and approved by Special Olympics Wisconsin. Now the key here is when the individual is completing the form, the minor must have one reference from a school or church or civic group. The other reference could be a friend or mentor, but cannot be a relative or guardian, right? As a minor, they do not have to complete the protective behavior training. Now, all minors will automatically be restricted from driving on behalf of Special Olympics Wisconsin. Essentially, the agencies, they cannot drive. Athletes are restricted from being chaperones as a driver. Right? Minors will not be restricted from financial duties because the screening method would not be able to determine whether a minor has a criminal record in regards to financial issues. Each agency or SOWI event would need to make a decision whether or not to use minors for financial duties. So it's up to the individual program and the regional and state staff to the use of a minor in the handling of money. So that's a case-by-case basis. Chaperones at state competitions or overnight events must be a minimum of 16 years of age or older. 15, no. They may be mature, which is fantastic, but they cannot chaperone or overnight state competitions if they are under 16 years of age. The age eligibility requirements listed below indicate the least restrictive requirements mandated by Special Olympics Wisconsin. Ages 14 to 17, no parent or guardian need accompany the minor, but there has to be an adult Class A volunteer present. So when they're at a practice, a local practice, as long as there's another Class A volunteer there, that's fantastic. At a regional competition, district competition, state competition, there are other Class A volunteers there, so they are covered in this aspect. But for those ages 8 to 13, they must be accompanied by a parent or guardian to closely supervise the minor at the practice or event. Right? They need a parent or guardian for this aspect of it. No one under the age of 8 is eligible to be a Class A volunteer. Now, background checks, when we get the forms, we do background checks on all individuals for that to verify information and such. I mean, some of the background check disqualifiers, so if you get a notification that you've been disqualified to be a Class A volunteer, here's some of the reasons for this. And this is outlined within the volunteer policies within the agency manager handbook. It's also detailed or noted within the Special Olympics Wisconsin website as well. So automatic disqualifiers from the criminal end of it is if a criminal background check discloses a conviction for any of the offenses from child abuse, sexual abuse, causing a child's death, kidnapping, murder, all of the really bad stuff. In addition to one of the things, and utilizing Special Olympics Wisconsin, a permit, concealed weapons state with a permit. If you're convicted of carrying a concealed weapon without a permit, this is a disqualifier as well. From other disqualifiers, but this is not automatic. In the criminal background check, if we disclose a conviction for any of the offenses listed below, we may deny the prospective or current volunteer from participation as a volunteer in any capacity. The volunteer does not have a right to appeal in writing to the SOWI Appeals Committee. Does have the right to appeal, and it must be done within 30 days of the receipt of the denial letter, all right, for that. But they may be denied, but they also may just be provided a restriction. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Adverse judgment for damages, settlement or civil penalty, theft of funds, fraud, larceny, controlled substance crime, being a subject of any court order involving sexual abuse or physical abuse. All right. So you may, let's say, theft of funds, you may still be able to volunteer, but you just can't handle money. If you're caught doing so, then it becomes an automatic disqualifier. But if you want to volunteer, you could do it in a different capacity. You just wouldn't be financially related with that. So they're not automatic disqualifiers. They are potential disqualifiers based on the severity, the number, that type of thing. So a number of things are taken into consideration for that. One of the key things, and we see this and it causes a little bit of concern, but one of the key things on here is when completing the Class A form, the key portion of it under Section 4 is truthfulness. As you can see right in the middle, all 5 questions below must be answered truthfully or you will automatically be disqualified, right? Do you use illegal drugs? Do you ever have convicted of a crime? Now, it's okay if you put yes. It's letting us know it's true, and it might be, 10 years ago and you were lighting fireworks in the backyard and you didn't have a permit, and you got a misdemeanor for it and that type of thing, and it's on your record. Just note that, and that isn't necessarily a rule or a means to deny you the ability to volunteer with the agency or as a program as a whole. So being truthful, but if you said no and some criminal behavior shows up on that, it's an automatic disqualifier for the lack of telling the truth. So we want you to be honest, or want the volunteer to be honest going forward. So to be considered for participation as a Class A volunteer, prospective volunteers must submit a signed, completed, and truthful Special Olympics Wisconsin Class A volunteer registration form. Failure to do so may result in the rejection of the registration form or termination from the program. The decision of SOWI will, with regards to any volunteer's registration form and their suitability for volunteering, rests with the sole and absolute discretion of Special Olympics Wisconsin. In exercising that discretion, Special Olympics Wisconsin shall be guided by its mission statement and the volunteer policy and procedures. So it's not taken lightly. It is discussed and a direction is provided. Now, as part of that too is once you become a Class A volunteer, both at an agency level or any other level, part of that is the code of conduct, and this falls under both a coach/volunteer code of conduct, philosophy, and procedures. This is all again part of the volunteer policies in the agency management handbook. All right, coaches, volunteer code of conduct, philosophies, and procedures. The growth and increased recognition and support of Special Olympics deems it necessary to protect the quality and integrity of the program. The code of conduct is an established standard giving the behavior of all SOWI coaches and volunteers. In addition to that, there's a spectator's code of conduct. There's a staff code of conduct. There's an official's code of conduct. So the integrity and the quality of the program is of utmost importance and for the safety and guidance of the athletes and the program itself. All coaches, volunteers are expected to abide by the code of conduct and standards of behavior as established by Special Olympics Wisconsin. Coaches and volunteers should be reminded that volunteering is a privilege, not a right. Right? And it's an at-will program. Right? And the agency manager has the authority to make immediate accommodations until final decisions can be made when in regards to the code of conduct and the following of the philosophies and procedures thereof. By agreeing to abide by the code of conduct, each coach and volunteer agrees to adhere to the coach and volunteer behavior, upholding the philosophy, principles, and policies of Special Olympics, Inc. and Special Olympics Wisconsin. And this is detailed within the protected behaviors and all of the coaches' philosophies of Special Olympics at all levels. Behavior in a manner consistent with our core values of mutual respect, positive attitude, accountability, teamwork, and dedication. What is a code of conduct violation? All right. The following are unacceptable behaviors, from profanity and verbal abuse. And this is toward an athlete, toward another Class A volunteer, a fan, an official. The overall, just kind of going off the deep end, the tobacco use in restricted areas, use of alcohol. Special Olympics does not allow alcohol or tobacco during any of its competitions within the area of competition. Frequent unexcused absences, and this can be determined at the agency level. What is that threshold? If you miss every other practice, does that show that they get the dedication needed to the athletes that they expect and is required for that? Not following the rules of the sports, not providing adequate athlete supervision, physical or verbal sexual overtures, any unwelcome physical contact, physical abuse, not following the philosophy, principles, and policies of Special Olympics, Inc. and Special Olympics Wisconsin. Those that have an asterisk on it will result in immediate suspension from any and all Special Olympics activities. If you as an agency manager have questions, or you as a volunteer see something or have questions regarding this, feel free to contact the regional athletic director or someone from the state office or the director of field services or discuss via a telephone call and email and for further explanation. The code of conduct, if they violate, if a Class A volunteer violates the code of conduct, what is the steps taken? Now the key here is, it may or may not take place at what level. we like to, if it's at the agency level, most agency managers, we ask that they take care of it. If it's at a competition, uh, then the regional staff may get involved. They may involve the state staff, the director of field services, and members from there. Depends upon the extent and what all happened in the incident uh, itself. Should the behavior or attitude of any coach volunteer be contrary to the code of conduct, the following steps may be taken by the agency manager or a staff member from the regional office or the headquarter office. So it depends, as I mentioned earlier, it depends upon the severity and what is required uh, from a discipline end of it. Verbal warning may take place, and we may ask that the Class A volunteer provide feedback as to how you're going to remedy the situation. A written warning may be asked to provide a copy to the regional staff, and if a minor, the parent, the guardian, or caseworker provide that. A personal meeting with the coach or volunteer to review the unacceptable behavior and how do we figure out, how do we work for improvement. We don't want to lose the volunteers, but if we see a continued behavior, then next steps may be taken. If the coach volunteers under 18, their parent or guardian maybe or caseworker maybe will be part of that meeting and discussion. Suspension from volunteer service, including but not limited to practices or competition or Special Olympics events as a whole. The regional staff must be contacted before an agency manager suspends a coach's or volunteer if the regional staff office will discuss the circumstances and approve the action. It may come directly from the regional staff, and it may come directly from the state staff as well, SOWI headquarters, again, dependent upon the severity uh, of the incident. Finally, some of that, but it's not limited to suspension of one sports season, expulsion for a year, permanent expulsion. It all depends, again, on the circumstances and the discussion points thereof. Right, that's all kind of key. And if you've got any questions regarding the Class A process, feel free to contact your agency manager or reference the Special Olympics Wisconsin website or contact your regional staff or state staff. And we're all willing to answer to our best ability and willing to discuss any concerns, any questions that you may have regarding that process. So we do thank all Class A volunteers for the time and the dedication, as stated earlier. Without you, we wouldn't be able to run a lot of what we do and what we provide to the athletes on a year-round basis. The final aspect that we want to talk about is the volunteer expense reimbursement form, and this generally comes from the agency manager, must approve, as well as the signature from the Class A volunteer. Now, volunteers may receive reimbursements for approved agency-related expenses. Please fill out the expense reimbursement form found in the Forms of Duplication section of the handbook, which is on page 10 in the Forms and Duplications. The expense reimbursement form should be filled out each time you reimburse an individual for mileage. The form is available in the Forms of Duplication, and please note that you need to use the IRS charitable rate, which is 14 cents a mile. Right? If this rate is not used, the receipt of the funds could receive a 1099 at the end of the year. Please keep in mind that you can claim mileage on your taxes or you can get a SOWI reimbursement, but you cannot do both. It's an either or. In addition to, if you're doing other travel, you're staying overnight, you're going to an event in another state, et cetera, that can all be reimbursed as well, as long as there's receipts attached to this, affairs or costs associated within the respective columns of rooms, meals, etc. But there must be receipts attached to either one of them. And it's for allowable expenses, just refer to the agency management handbook under the finance section, and it will tell you what's an allowable expense and what is not. At the end, uh, the agency manager has to sign off on it, as well as the Class A volunteer, the date, the total amount, and then sent into the Special Wisconsin headquarters, the accounts payable for that to be processed. So it must be received to the state office by end of business day on that Monday in order to be check to be sent out that Wednesday. So again, what is critical is you need this receipts attached to it, and there's only good within 90 days. So if you do not process this and process the receipts by within that 90-day time frame, once it goes beyond that, these are beyond the uh, approved time period for processing. Well, thank you very much. Again, hopefully this further helps and clarifies the volunteer policies processes, expectations, directions, and so forth. Feel free to contact your regional office or state office if you have any questions regarding this. Have a good day.